I never thought I'd be one of those women posting their marital problems on Reddit, but here I am. I don't even know where to start. My whole life has been turned upside down in the span of 3 weeks. My husband James, 42M, and I, 38F, have been married for 12 years. We have 2 children, Emma, 10, and Liam, 7. From the outside, we had what most would consider a perfect life: beautiful home in the suburbs, successful careers, he's an investment banker, I am a pediatrician, yearly vacations, and what I thought was a solid, loving relationship. The first sign something was wrong came when I found a receipt for a hotel downtown in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. It was dated for a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks ago, a day he was supposedly at a conference in the city. Nothing unusual about a hotel for a conference, but why was the check-in time 2 p.m. and check-out 6 p.m. the same day? When I casually mentioned finding the receipt, his reaction was strange. He snatched it from my hand, saying it must have been a mistake with the billing system. Something in his eyes made my stomach drop. That night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time in our marriage, I did something I never thought I would. I checked his phone while he was in the shower. His text messages were clean, suspiciously clean. No hotel confirmations, nothing unusual. But then I noticed a second email app buried in a folder on his phone. The app required a password. I tried our anniversary, nothing. Our kids' birthdays, nothing. Out of desperation, I tried his mother's birthday, and it opened. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of emails to and from someone named K, hotel confirmations. Explicit messages about their sex life. Photos I can't even describe here. But the worst part? References to conversations about their future together, going back 3 years. This wasn't just some affair. This was a parallel life. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself, then deleted the emails from his sent folder. I needed time to process, to think about what to do next. The next morning, I acted normal, got the kids ready for school, kissed him goodbye as he left for work. But inside, I was shattered. The man I had built my life with, had children with, was a complete stranger. I called in sick to work and spent the day going through our finances. That's when I discovered the second blow. Large sums of money had been regularly transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Over $200,000 in the past 2 years alone. When he came home that evening, I tried to act normal through dinner and putting the kids to bed. I needed more information before confronting him. But just as we were getting ready for bed, his phone rang. He looked at it, said it was work, and stepped into the hallway to answer. I pressed my ear against the door and heard him whisper, "I can't talk now." She's suspicious. "No, I am handling it. I'll call you tomorrow." When he came back in, something in me snapped. All the pain and betrayal of the day boiled over, and I confronted him with what I knew. What happened next was so unexpected, I am still in shock. Instead of denial or begging for forgiveness, his face changed. It was like a mask falling away. He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Well, I guess that saves me the trouble of breaking it to you gently." Then he told me he'd already filed for divorce that morning. First, thank you all for the supportive comments on my previous post. I've been reading them through tears all night. To those asking if this is fake, I wish it was. This nightmare is my reality now. After James dropped the divorce bombshell, I completely froze. He just stood there, watching me with cold eyes I didn't recognize. When I finally managed to speak, I asked about the kids, our home, everything we built together. His response was chilling. "You'll get what the law requires, nothing more." I've been planning this for a long time. I slept in the guest room that night, if you can call staring at the ceiling while having panic attacks, sleeping. The next morning, he acted completely normal with the kids at breakfast, laughing, helping with homework, being the perfect dad they always known. I somehow managed to hold myself together until they left for school. Once they were gone, I confronted him again, demanding answers about Kate and the missing money. He smirked and said, "Her name is Kira. And she's pregnant." I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. 4 months pregnant. While I was helping Liam with his science project and taking Emma to soccer practice, my husband was starting a new family. The money? Apparently, he'd been funneling it to buy a house for them in another state. A fresh start, he called it. He seemed almost relieved to finally tell me, Like he'd been carrying this secret for so long that unburdening himself was a release. What happened next still feels surreal. As we were arguing, my phone rang. It was my OB/GYN's office calling to confirm my appointment for next week. James froze mid-sentence. I hadn't told him about the appointment because I was waiting for the right moment. I am 8 weeks pregnant. The look on his face shifted from shock to something darker. He immediately accused me of getting pregnant on purpose to trap him. When I reminded him that he was the one who had suggested we try for a third child last year, he called me a liar. The gaslighting was so extreme I actually began doubting my own memories for a moment. That afternoon, while I was picking up the kids from school, he cleared out his home office and personal belongings. By the time we returned, half the closet was empty, and all his electronics were gone. He left a business card for his divorce attorney on the kitchen counter. I was in a daze, trying to explain to Emma and Liam why Daddy wasn't home for dinner. I told them he had a work emergency, but Emma, always perceptive, knew something was wrong. "Is Daddy leaving us?" she asked, and I didn't know what to say. After putting them to bed, I finally called my sister Claire, who drove over immediately. She helped me secure emergency appointments with both a divorce attorney and a therapist for the next day. Then she helped me gather all our important documents, birth certificates, property deeds, insurance policies, and discovered something that made the situation even more bizarre. Our life insurance policies had been changed 3 months ago. The beneficiary for James's policy was no longer me, but a trust I'd never heard of. And my policy amount had been increased substantially. The implications made me physically ill. Was he hoping something would happen to me? Was that even part of his plan? That night, I received a text from an unknown number. He never let you keep the children. I've watched him destroy people before. Back away now. I showed it to Claire, who insisted on staying the night. We triple-checked all the locks, and she slept on a chair wedged against my bedroom door. Morning brought another shock. James's boss called, asking why James hadn't shown up for work all week. According to him, James had requested a 2-week vacation starting Monday, the day before I found the hotel receipt. The work emergency was a complete fabrication. As I was processing this information, a courier arrived with divorce papers. The terms were brutal. He wanted full custody of the kids, the house sold, and claimed I was mentally unstable and unfit to parent. The most disturbing part? The petition was dated 3 weeks ago, before I discovered anything. This wasn't a reaction to being caught. This was the plan all along. When I opened our safe to store the insurance documents, I made one final discovery that changed everything: a small USB drive labeled with my name. What I found on it has turned this from a divorce into something much more sinister. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support. So many of you have shared similar stories or offered advice, and it's helping me stay strong through this nightmare. I am writing this from a hotel room where I've been staying with the kids for the past 2 days. The USB drive I found changed everything. What I initially thought was just a cruel affair and divorce turned out to be something much more calculated and sinister. The drive contained multiple folders. The first was labeled Sarah, with dozens of videos of me, in our bedroom, bathroom, with the kids, even at work functions. He'd been secretly recording me for years. Some videos had been edited to make normal moments look concerning. Me taking prescription medication for migraines edited to look like substance abuse. Arguments where he'd deliberately provoke me then record my reactions. The second folder was labeled Financials and contained evidence of what I can only describe as a long-term financial scam. James hadn't just been hiding money from me. He'd been systematically draining my personal inheritance that I received after my parents died 5 years ago. Money I thought was safely invested for our children's college funds. The third folder was the most disturbing, labeled Exit Strategy. It contained a detailed timeline for divorcing me, documents about custody arrangements that would limit my access to the children, and, most chillingly, research on how to make someone appear mentally unstable. There were even notes about gradually increasing my anxiety medication dosage without my knowledge. With shaking hands, I checked my prescription bottle. The pills looked slightly different than I remembered. I immediately called Claire, who came over with her husband, a former police officer. We packed essential items for me and the kids, and they escorted us to a hotel. Claire's husband suggested I get a blood test immediately to check what substances might be in my system. I also secured all our food and drinks from the house as evidence. The next morning, my attorney was shocked by what I showed her and immediately filed for an emergency protection order. The blood test results came back showing traces of psychiatric medications I'd never been prescribed. My attorney helped me contact the FBI, as some of James's financial manipulations crossed state lines and involved significant fraud. They opened an investigation and advised me to stay somewhere James wouldn't know about. That afternoon, things escalated further. James showed up at the kids' school trying to pick them up early. Thankfully, I had already alerted the school about the situation, and they refused to release them to him. He apparently became so aggressive that they called security. While all this was happening, I received an anonymous email with attachments showing James wasn't just having an affair with Kira, he had at least 2 other women he was involved with simultaneously, each thinking they were his only relationship. The email came from someone claiming to be another victim of his manipulation. She had discovered the others recently and had been following his activities. According to her, James's real name isn't even James Williams, it's Daniel Hawkins. He's apparently done this before, creating a false identity, marrying someone with financial assets or professional status, then systematically destroying them while extracting maximum financial gain. I was in such shock that Claire insisted I go to the ER. While there, something even more unexpected happened. A nurse recognized me from a photo, not as a patient, but from a missing persons flyer from 5 years ago. Apparently, there was a woman named Elizabeth Morris who disappeared from Seattle around the time James and I were on our second honeymoon there. The police had questioned people staying at nearby hotels, including us. James had handled everything, claiming I was ill that day. I have no memory of any police inquiry. Elizabeth bore a striking resemblance to me, was also a doctor, and was last seen with a man matching James's description. Her case was never solved. The nurse called a detective she knew, who asked to speak with me urgently. He showed me photos of Elizabeth and several other missing women from different states over the past decade. All professional women, all with similar appearances, all last seen with a man whose description matched James. As I sat there looking at these women's faces, something else clicked. The mysterious text warning me that he destroys people, it might not have been a threat. It might have been a warning. My phone rang. Unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice simply said, "I am Kira. There is no baby. I just found out who he really is. We need to meet. He's planning something, and I think you and your children are in danger." I am writing this from a safe house arranged by the FBI. The past 48 hours have been the most terrifying of my life. I apologize in advance if this post seems disjointed. I am running on no sleep and pure adrenaline. After receiving Kira's call, I agreed to meet her in a public place, a busy coffee shop near the police station. Claire insisted on coming with me and positioning herself at a nearby table. We also alerted the detective about the meeting, who arranged for plainclothes officers to be present. Kira looked nothing like I had imagined. She was about my age, professional, well-dressed, not the young homewrecker I had pictured in my darkest moments. The first thing she said was, "I am sorry. I didn't know he was married until 3 days ago." She explained that she met James, who had introduced himself to her as Michael Green, at a medical conference a year ago. She's a pharmaceutical researcher, and they connected over discussions about new migraine treatments, the very condition I suffer from. Their relationship had been mainly long distance, with him visiting her when he claimed to be on business trips. He had proposed to her just last month, promising they would start a new life together soon. The pregnancy was a lie he had told both of us, to hurt me and to pressure her into moving quickly. 3 days ago, while using his laptop, she discovered documents with multiple identities. When she confronted him, he became eerily calm, then threatening. She fled her apartment and has been staying with friends since. But the most chilling part came next. She showed me photos she'd secretly taken of his notes in a journal he always kept locked. They detailed plans for what he called the final phase, scheduled for this coming weekend, when he was supposed to take the kids for dad time, while I adjusted to the divorce. The notes included a remote cabin location, references to clean dissolution, and a timeline for declaring me mentally unstable, followed by my tragic accident weeks later. There were calculations of insurance payouts and custody arrangements that would give him complete control of the children and all assets. As we were talking, Kira's phone rang. She answered, went pale, and handed it to me. It was James, and he knew exactly where we were. "You two look cozy," he said. "Blue really brings out your eyes today, Sarah." I frantically scanned the coffee shop, but couldn't see him. The detective, seeing our panic, immediately approached. As this happened, the barista called out an order for James that no one claimed. The detective ordered the shop evacuated and called for backup. Outside, as police secured the area, Claire's car suddenly exploded in the parking lot. In the chaos that followed, I glimpsed James calmly walking away down a side street. The police found devices in both my phone and Kira's that allowed him to track our locations and listen to our conversations. My children were immediately taken into protective custody while the FBI set up surveillance at all their possible locations. That night, as I was being interviewed at the police station, an officer came in with news that made my blood run cold. James had been spotted near my sister's house, where the kids had stayed previously. When police approached, he fled, leaving behind a bag containing duct tape, sedatives, fake passports for him and my children, but not me, and a recently purchased life insurance policy on me for $5 million. As dawn broke, my phone received a video message from James's number. It showed footage of my children sleeping, footage that had been taken the night before they came with me to the hotel. He had been in their rooms while they slept, just hours after I discovered his affair. The message read, "They'll always be mine. They ruined everything. Now we play by new rules." A nationwide manhunt began. My children and I were moved to an undisclosed location with 24-hour protection. The FBI brought in specialists in identity theft and serial predators. They believe James Daniel may be linked to at least 7 missing women in 5 states over the past 12 years. Just as I was finally starting to feel safe, a package was delivered to the police station addressed to me. Inside was a thumb drive containing videos of our home, the safe house, the inside of my sister's home, and most terrifyingly, footage of the children in their new protected location, clearly filmed that morning. How was he always one step ahead? How did he know where we were? The answer came in the most unexpected way. While reviewing security footage from the safe house, an agent noticed something odd about the teddy bear my daughter had been clutching since we left home, the one James had given her for her birthday last month. Inside was a sophisticated tracking device and microphone. As they swept everything we brought with us, they found 5 more devices hidden in our belongings. He'd been listening to everything, tracking every move. That night, as new security protocols were being implemented, the power to the entire block suddenly went out. In the darkness, I heard a familiar voice whisper in my ear. "Did you really think you could take my children?" I screamed, but his hand covered my mouth. The last thing I remember was a sharp pain in my neck, and then darkness. I woke up bound and gagged in the trunk of a moving car. This will be my final update. I am writing this from a hospital bed, with FBI agents posted outside my door and my children safely asleep in the room next door. The trunk of the car was dark and cold. I could feel every bump in the road as we drove for what seemed like hours. Despite my terror, I forced myself to stay calm and think. The zip ties binding my wrists were tight, but I managed to reach the emergency trunk release that's mandatory in newer vehicles. Thank God for small mercies. I waited, counting the minutes, feeling the car slow down and turn several times. When I felt it come to a complete stop, I pulled the release and burst out of the trunk, tumbling onto gravel. We were at a remote gas station. James was inside, paying. The attendant looked up in shock as I stumbled toward the store, still partially bound and with tape hanging from my face where I managed to work it loose. I screamed for help. The young attendant immediately locked the door, trapping James inside, and called 911. James's face when he realized what was happening, I'll never forget that look. Not anger, not even surprise. Just cold calculation as he pulled out a gun and pointed it at the attendant. What James didn't realize was that the attendant had a weapon of his own behind the counter. What followed was chaos, breaking glass, gunshots, me crawling behind a nearby car for cover. When police arrived minutes later, they found James shot in the shoulder, restrained by a former military police officer who had been filling up his truck when everything went down. At the hospital, as doctors treated me for mild sedative poisoning and cuts from the zip ties, investigators revealed the final pieces of this horrific puzzle. James, or Daniel, or Michael, or whatever his real name is, has been linked to the disappearances of 9 women across 6 states. 2 bodies have been found. The others remain missing. In each case, he created a new identity, targeted professional women with assets, isolated them from friends and family, then disappeared with their money once they were no longer useful. Some he simply abandoned. Others weren't so fortunate. His real name is Anthony Mercer. He's wanted in connection with financial crimes in 3 countries. His pattern was always the same: charm, control, isolate, exploit, and eliminate. What made my case different? According to the FBI, it was the children. He had never stayed in a relationship long enough to have children before. Investigators believe he actually developed an attachment to them, not in a healthy, loving way, but as possessions he wasn't willing to give up. The evidence recovered from his multiple storage units and electronic devices has been described by one agent as the most methodical predatory behavior he'd seen in 20 years of service. James had detailed files on all of his victims, including their routines, weaknesses, financial information, and in some cases, their final moments. When they searched the cabin mentioned in his notes, they found a freshly dug grave. It was sized for an adult woman. My children and I are now in protective custody while the prosecution builds their case. The charges against him include attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, and the investigators believe there will be multiple murder charges as they continue to find more victims. As for me, I am working with trauma counselors to help my children process what happened. They know their father did bad things and isn't coming back, but they spared them the horrific details. That conversation will come when they older with proper therapeutic support. The divorce is proceeding on grounds that no lawyer has ever had to check on the forms before. My attorney is working with prosecutors to recover as much of our stolen assets as possible, and victim advocacy groups have connected me with resources for rebuilding our lives. Kira and 2 other women have come forward to testify about their relationships with him. They formed an unlikely support group, bonded by our shared trauma and determination to see justice done. Yesterday, I visited James in the prison hospital where he's being held without bail. I needed to look him in the eyes one last time, to see if there was anything of the man I thought I married. He smiled at me with the same charm he'd used when we first met. "You know, in another life, we could have been happy," he said. "Part of me did love you, Sarah." I didn't respond with anger or tears. Instead, I placed a copy of the evidence file on the table between us. "The only thing I want to know is where Elizabeth Morris's body is," I said. "Her parents deserve to bury their daughter." His face changed then. The mask slipped completely. "You think they won," he hissed. "But you'll never feel safe again. You'll look over your shoulder for the rest of your life. You'll see me in every stranger's face. I'll always be with you." I leaned forward and whispered, "No, you want because you nothing. Not James or Daniel or Michael or Anthony. You just empty. And while you rot in a cell, I am going to build a beautiful life with my children. A life where your name is never spoken." I stood to leave, but turned back at the door. "And just so you know, I flushed our wedding ring down the toilet at that gas station." It seemed fitting. The investigation continues to expand. Authorities in 3 countries are now involved. My focus, however, is entirely on healing and creating a safe, loving environment for my children. For those of you who have followed my story and offered support, thank you. For anyone in a relationship with someone who isolates you, controls you, or makes you doubt your own reality, please reach out for help. I ignored red flags because I wanted to believe in the life we had built. That nearly cost me everything. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And remember that love doesn't take, it gives. This will be my last update. My new life, our new life, begins today. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it and learned from it. I appreciate your likes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.